if you
Yeah,
ever do a Gore Range traverse, Justin, are you allowed to talk about it?
I don't know. Only to gore galore, I guess.
Yeah, right.
Welcome to the Greens and Blues 14er podcast. This episode, Zach learns how to crash worship. I learned that mountain goats are not very good tour guides. And we continue our conversation with the Long Ranger, Justin Simoni. So, to go along with your Sangre traverse, you mentioned in your blog about the Mosquito and 10 Mile traverse
Hmm.
as well. I wanted to
Hmm.
ask kind of some more details around that and again, prepping for it, highlights, lowlights, that
Sure.
kind of thing.
The Mosquito 10-mile range, again, is this incredible mountain range in Colorado. One of the highlights of that range is there's like a 30-mile section or something that's above 13,000 feet. You can't find that kind of terrain outside of like Alaska, outside of in the United States. So it was actually one of my kind of mentors, Peter Bachwin, who made it his goal to do the Mosquito 10-mile traverse from Weston Pass to Frisco, Colorado.
Yeah.
And he tried a whole bunch of times and couldn't really finish it, but he really wanted to do it in one go. He didn't want to like camp on the ridge for obvious reasons. What crazy person would do that? So he just couldn't go fast enough, or like he hit weather, or like things happen, or he just got tired,
There's
or
that
he just
shack on
lost.
Horseshoe Peak, man. Horseshoe Mountain.
Yeah,
You could
right,
just sleep in there,
right.
bro. It's fine.
Well, that's the problem. Um, so like I kind of took that idea, but I'm like, again, what if instead of like starting at Weston Pass, which isn't the end of the Mosquito 10-mile range, I started on Trout Creek Pass, which is the start end of the range, and go all the way to Frisco, which is the other end. I'm like, that would tack on a full day, but I'm like, okay, I'll just backpack it kind of thing. It's not like I recon the route or anything. I've been on Mount Democrat, which is part of the range. I've been on some of the other peaks, like peak 1 through 10 outside of Breckenridge,
Yeah.
which is the last part of it. But I'm like, I don't even know what's over there. So, well, this is a great excuse to find that out and visit some less trodden areas that don't exactly have to do with 14ers, but like there's 14ers a part of them. There's Mount Sherman's part of the range. So it kind of like tricked myself that time where I had a friend who was going to Buena Vista anyways. I'm like, hey, can I grab a ride? Can you just drop me off on Trout Creek Pass? I'm going to, and I like made a little lie to myself. I'm like, oh, I'm just gonna recon it for like a day or two and see what it's like.
Fake it till you make it again, Justin. That's
Oh
what
yeah,
you're
like
good at, right?
yeah,
I'm
and like I mean,
just gonna do this for
like
a day and see what happens.
right. I was like, oh, what's why not? This will be fine. So yeah, like the first day was like 30 miles and just like mostly below the tree line, like bushwhacking, just trying to follow this ridge. And I was like, this is insane. Like I haven't seen a person and I haven't seen water. Like there's no snow, there's no creek, there's
Mm.
no pond. I'm like, what is going on? I got to like Weston Pass that night essentially. I was like, oh, well, guess we're keeping on going. And it's really cool. You from Weston Pass, you climb up to Weston Peak.
Yep.
And again, you just see the entire range up, in front of you. Like I can see Frisco. We're just going to follow this ridge. That's all that's going to happen. I'm
There's a
like,
kind of simplicity to that, right?
yeah,
Like I know where
yeah,
I'm going. And at
yeah.
least there, like there's no scramble at all.
It's pretty chill
Yeah, it's pretty
until
chill.
what is that Centennial in back of Quandary? That's where things kind of kick up.
Oh, well, there's the Drift Atlantic Traverse, or is it Drift
Yeah.
to Pacific? Yeah,
And like
that's
that was a big
funky,
unknown
man.
because you
Again,
look at it from Quandary and you're like, huh, glad
that's
I'm
not like
here, not over
that.
there.
One of these is not like the others, right? Like that doesn't look
Right.
anything like the rest of the
Uh,
range.
yeah, and I knew about it because I Peter Bachwin did these wonderful trip reports of his attempts, and he is, I mean, he's a very well-known ultra runner in his own right, but he's also has a really great ability to scramble. So he's done it a whole bunch of times. I'm like, well, if Peter can do it, I guess I could do it. It's kind of my thought. It was really chill until that point. I'm just like, what did I get myself into? Like, I think there was like a mile section that took me 3 or 4 hours.
Oh,
Oh,
it's
wow.
gnarly.
Yeah, it's
That's
super nasty.
it's committed too. Like
Yeah,
once you're on it, you're on it.
Yeah. So that was my last day. I think that took 3 days and change. So the last day was like the Drift, Fletcher, Atlantic, and like that took like half a day. And I'm like, well, I kind of want to finish up tonight. So I'm like, I'm looking at Pacific, peak 10, peak 9, 8, 7. I'm like, yeah, it looks doable. Let's put it in high gear. So
Just to put that in context for regular people, like if I go out and I do, one day I did peaks 8, 9, and 10 in a morning. And like I went home and I took a really good nap after that.
right, right,
That was a good day for me, or
right.
one day I did Pacific, Crystal, and Atlantic the same day. And I was just like, that's a big day for Zach,
Such a big day.
And for you, that's
Yeah.
that's a segment. That's 1/10 of your day. Like that's insane.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I woke up before the sun came up. I like saw the sunrise on the Drift Peak proper. And then like, yeah, I spent the entire day doing the rest of this range. I remember I finished in Frisco at like 10:45 and my brother was waiting for me like at a bar because that was the only thing open, like to get me like a hamburger and like to take me to his home to like so I could sleep. But yeah, I was like shell shocked. I was like, what just happened? I kind of love the idea of doing these ridge lines. That was like probably one of the first ridge lines I did. I was like, I have to find more of these. Like, where do they exist? Like, where are some really wonderful lines? And it's not that like people just don't do this length of ridge line. Like the Mosquito 10 mile is like 60 something miles.
Yeah.
The Sangres is 120, so kind of twice as much. But like people are not into sleeping on top of ridge lines, and for good reason. So like it's really very much a fringe thing to get this stuff done. I can't think of other ridge lines in other states where people are really doing multi-day things.
So what other ones in Colorado? I know you kind of have your eyes set on a few others.
Sure. So I've also done parts of the Continental Divide.
Yep.
I've done the Continental Divide from Milner Pass to Earthen Pass, and that was actually I think that was a first, which was really funny because the second person who did it started before I finished. Like it was weird, like feeling in the air where everyone all at once wanted to do this like segment of the Continental Divide. But I think I was the first one to actually get it finished. And it was to the point where I was like on day 3 or something, 2 or 3, and I like bumped into two people who were I knew who were reconning part of the route to do it later that summer. Like I was just like, what's going? I felt bad. I'm like, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to like steal this from you. I was just like, it's just in the air, man. I live in Boulder, so it's basically the mountain range you see from
Yeah.
town, so it's like the most obvious thing to do. So that's kind of why it was on everyone's mind.
I mean, isn't it
Um,
also in the air because there's a few people like you that are doing these big extended efforts and on these sinuous ridge lines that are really aesthetically appealing and
oh yeah,
also capture our kind of like imagination for what a long effort looks like that combines you've got to know how to scramble, you've got to have the endurance, you've got to have the mental fortitude, and you got to be smart enough to do it.
right.
Like, isn't there a
Well,
sense in which because there's a few of you out there doing it, more people are probably going to start doing it, right?
yeah, I mean, just like the Sangre Traverse, the initial attempt, which was like way ahead of its time, was like in the 60s. Like that ridge line from Milner to Berthen Pass. I mean, that's the Fifthner Traverse. That was like Carl Fifthner. He had this, as a friends with Jerry Roach, the guy who wrote the 14er guidebook. He's like, I want to do this ridge line one day and do all the mountains. Like that was his idea decades ago. And like, unfortunately, he had an avalanche accident and lost his life. But like, that's like before him, I'm sure someone else thought about it, but like who actually went out and did it? That's cool. Before my trip, there's a sister route that starts at the trailhead of Long's Peak, does
Hmm.
Long's Peak, and then traverses over to the Continental Divide, and then ends at the South Arapaho trailhead,
Yeah.
Fourth of July trailhead. So just kind of like a major segment of it, all the good stuff. And that's something that Buzz Varel did a couple years before my trip for sure. That a lot of people have now tried to do. That's called the LA freeway route. So it's like half as long kind of thing. So
Having
yeah.
driven LA freeways for a good stretch of my life, I'm not sure where that name comes from.
Oh,
Like,
it's from the country song. I forget who the musician is, but
okay.
I think it's just like the Venn diagram of climber, good enough climber and good enough runner that allows you to do these kinds of routes. And maybe even like third circle of like good enough backpacker that has all those skills is actually pretty minute.
Mm.
So yeah, like you kind of be like, well, what do we do if we're not going to go to the Himalaya, you know?
Or
So
there's a fourth circle there of free time, right? Like,
right, right.
you know,
Can take a week off when high pressure system, gets into area.
exactly, right? Like,
If you don't mind kind of
Sure.
summarizing the Sowatch range and your vision for that traverse. Have you attempted it or it's on your radar?
The Sawatch Range is a range in Colorado, and the Continental Divide just so happens to go through it. Again, I was after having his experience on the Sangres, on the Mosquito 10 Mile, on these other sections of the Continental Divide. I'm like, why don't do the same thing just in the Sawatch? And I'm like, all right, what does Sawatch has a reputation of like class two hill climbs, like talus climbs, big heaps of talus. I'm like, this should be like a tune up for like something harder. I'm like, cool. I want something kind of chill, maybe have some fun on these things.
no, you don't, Justin. You're just fooling yourself if you're saying that.
So like I mapped it out. I'm like, yeah, I mean, like an obvious point to start would be in the south, just outside of Poncha Springs, there's a pass.
Yep.
And at the north, there's another pass, Tennessee Pass, outside of Leadville. That'd be perfect. I could hitch a ride from there, no problem. So I mapped it out and it seemed reasonable. And I was like, yeah, let's just go for it one time. And oh my gosh, like, dude, outside of the 14ers, like the Sawatch are terrifying. They're absolutely terrifying. Like, there's all sorts of like very, very loose chassis scrambling.
Yes.
That's like legitimately dangerous. Maybe a good preview of what you would expect is doing something like the Three Apostles,
Yep.
Like that's on the Continental Divide.
It is.
And okay, so think of doing Three Apostles, but doing it for 6 straight days. Like that's kind of a preview of what this route is about. So I think it was 2021 or 2022. I started in Tennessee Pass. I'm like, let's go. 5 days of food, 4 days of food. I'm like, I'm sure it won't take that long. Yeah, and I got to like I got to Red Mountain, which is kind of
Yes.
near La Plata Peak.
I was gonna
Very,
say that
yeah.
section from Grizzly Peak
Oh my
to what's
gosh.
the what is it Garfield?
Yeah,
And
something
that
like
is
that.
a
Yeah.
dirty, gravelly mess. And then
Dude,
Red Mountain's just right next to that. And that whole section to me is like it's doable, but utterly no fun,
oh,
right?
dude, I think it was like jumping across little towers, just trying to like
Yeah.
do. And again, I have like a backpack, like a backpacking kit with me. Like I'm
Mm.
not super limber, like
Mm-hmm.
30 plus pounds on my back. And yeah, it was like day number 3 or 4. I was like, whoa, this is a little bit more than I had bargained for. And I woke up and it was very auspicious feeling as if it was going to like rain all day. And I was like, I think I'm going to get down.
Mm.
And I still had more than half of the route to continue. And I was like, wow, I have to reconsider this. This is futuristic for me personally. I'm like, I can't take the same skills I've developed doing the Sangres and directly apply them to here. It's always when like the terrain gets a little loose, it gets a little scary.
Yeah.
There's a little bit more chance that you'll step on a rock and it's gonna move the wrong way. And then
Mm-hmm.
I'm not really one to look for dangerous things, if that's even believable. I like calculated risks for sure. But even when I did that trip, I had done some recon, and there's a ridge line that connects from Harvard Peak, the 14er, to another peak called Birthday Peak.
Mm-hmm.
And it looks terrifying from any aspect you look at it. You can look at it from the summit of Harvard, it's where Bear Lake is. And you're
Yep.
like, wow, that looks out of sorts and insane. And I've gone up to it, and I couldn't do the traverse from one peak to another. It was just too loose and scary. And I had that in the back of my mind when I tried my first attempt on the Sawatch, knowing that I might hit this ridge and not know what to do. So it was more of a let's see what happens more than I have to do this whole thing. So lots of things in the back of my mind.
Yeah, the
So it's an open
Swatch
project for sure.
Mm.
Swatch are funny. Like usually all their peaks are climbable, but they're
Yep.
climbable from a single aspect or
Right.
or another aspect. Mount Irvin and Mount Blaurock are kind of like that. I don't know if you've
Uh-huh.
seen them,
Yeah.
but like from one side, they're just walk-ups, but
Hmm.
from another side, they're terrifying, right?
Yeah.
They're
Yeah.
they're cliffs and it looks totally undoable. Yeah, and I think about doing that traverse like you're making it to where you're not doing the easy parts of it.
Yeah.
You're
Yeah.
directly confronting some of the hardest parts of that entire range.
Yeah.
Hmm.
And I'll tell you, like the worst people to like get a gauge of if something is doable are the mountain goats. You're like kind of look like if you're on urban, you're looking at Blah Rock, you're like, well, I see a mountain goat in the middle. I'm like, that means it's cool, right? And you get to it and you're like, this like it's just everything's just balanced on each other somehow. And you're like, what am I doing?
I don't know about you, but I can't run 30 miles across a cliff. 30,
Right.
which is what they do.
I mean, it's an amazing line, and I hope to get back one day. But yeah, we'll see. Probably what I'll do is I'll recon that one ridge line from Birthday Peak to Mount Harvard again, and see if I can't do it in a way that's reasonable. Where I'm not like taking a major chance, and maybe even equip it. Like when I was up there the first time, I got to an initial tower, and I was like, this is crazy scrambling just to get on top of this tower, and then I couldn't get down. There was no
Wow.
reasonable way to get down. But I found like an old like bunch of old slings and carabiners. So someone had set up a rappel on this many years beforehand. I didn't have a rope, but it also wasn't very safe.
Yeah, I
I
would
was
not
like,
trust that.
whoa, no. It was like one of these things that you tug too hard, it would just rip to shreds. But I'm like, well, someone's been here, so like maybe there's more of these here. I kind of am considering just equipping the ridge line with new rappel stations, just to like be ready for when I do it, or like
Hmm.
find a way. I don't know. I don't know if I want to put gear, and it's a wilderness area, so that's also on my
Yeah.
mind. Like, is it correct to make all these rappel stations? I'd be okay with it if I just could just leave no gear behind and still rappel, but like, we'll see. To be done in the future, I guess. I would love to talk to the person that like, initially repelled that tower and be like,
Yeah.
"Did you put all your faith in that? Because like the thing you slung, that rock, it moved." You know?
Well, there's not a body at the bottom of it, so maybe it worked at one time,
Right.
right?
Well, I have a guess on who it was, and it was this guy named Dunmeyer. Glenn and Pete Dunmeyer in 19, I think 85, were the first persons to ever ride their bikes to the 14ers and climb them all with 1985 mountain bikes. And they went
Wow.
on to become these incredible mountaineers. But one of them had a project of walking the entire Continental Divide in the country. So it might have been part of his project. This was just like 20 years ago. I feel like it's weird. I keep chasing this Dunmeyer guy doing his projects just in my style again and again. But it'd be funny to find out if it was his stuff.
With modern gear and modern training methods, right? You've at least got some of that advantage of a lighter bike and
Yeah, like
a
what's cool. It's like I can bring like a 6 millimeter line and it'd be like super light in my pack. And he had a knot. His stuff was way more heavier and stuff. But like yeah, like the mountain bikes they use for that 14er trip, like I can't imagine what is it, 30, 40 years of technology. That's a lot. Like mountain bikes in 1985 are pretty primitive. Like they didn't even have GPS. They didn't have 14ers.com, you know.
Hmm.
I can
no.
Oh
imagine
yeah.
being like, well, like we have to get to the Maroon Bells. Like I guess you go up Pearl Pass.
I mean, they wouldn't have even had there may not have even been guidebooks for
I
half those
don't.
peaks,
Yeah.
or
Exactly.
Dude,
they would have
they
just
had like they had a guidebook with no pictures and a road atlas.
yep.
This is so
Yeah.
crazy.
Hmm.
So I have the old clippings from Aspen Times that covered it, and like the pictures are just fantastic. They're just all like jumping in the air, like hollering. I'm like, yeah. I remember like when I did the 14er trip myself, I'm just like, this is a huge inspiration just to like be that excited.
Yeah. Well, I have one last question. You have a blog, and on your blog is your training log, or it's sporadically updated
Sporadically, yeah.
training log, and maybe just go through what training looks like. Given the amount of effort that you put in on these, I was surprised at how I'm going to put in air quotes how little training you
Yeah.
do. Like,
Yeah.
I'm thinking this guy's got to be on a bike, doing zone 1, zone 2 work for like 6 hours a day every day of the week,
Yeah.
and but yet your training seems really smart. And so I wanted to know kind of how you think about all that, how it translates into these bigger efforts.
Sure, like I have my own personal internal spreadsheet of like weekly goals of what I want to do. What's most important is like whatever I do that day, when I wake up the next day, I'm not tired. So I
Mm,
can do basically the same effort the next day and ad infinitum and then take like a day off. Yesterday I was like I went bouldering in the gym for an hour or maybe an hour and a half, and then I like was on the trainer for an hour. I'm like that's good. And then I like just pedaled around town. So yeah, I mean that's a normal day. Or I'll take a trail run up and down Green Mountain. So that's an hour and a half, and kind of like it just adds up.
when
So if
you're
you
on
do
the
that,
trainer, are you spinning or are you pushing it?
no, it's nasal breathing. I'm like watching a movie.
All right.
No, I mean it's also winter, so it's a little chill right now. Like, but like it seems like now every 2 weeks or something, I'll do like a bigger trip. Like I just got back from Little Bear, so then like it kind of kicks up a notch where like I get to Alamosa at 7 and I ride a bike to a trailhead for 2 hours. And then I do was it like a 3 hour hike to get to my campsite. And I do 12 hours up and down Little Bear that day. And then 20 weeks, do 2 hours hiking out and then another 2 hour bike ride back to Alamosa. But like, that's a pretty incredible effort. But like,
Yeah.
I'm doing it again at a pace where like the next day I'll be at the gym again, riding the bike for an
Wow.
hour. But yeah, I think it's more like I've just built up so much endurance
Hmm.
that I just have to maintain it now. And like it's winter and like you have to have intense training things and more intense. But like I've never been a very fast person. Like I've never done speed work.
Yeah.
I could just go forever is kind of like my MO.
You're the
Um,
long ranger, man.
oh
The
yeah,
long
I'm not
range,
the
I was gonna
fast
say, it's
ranger.
perfect.
I mean, if you need me to call you that, I can, just so you can claim that you've earned it, right?
Yeah. Yeah, not the fast ranger, but like I do wonder. I'm like, wow, what happens if I do speed work? Like, get a coach and be like, all right, we're doing a 2:30 marathon. What's that look like for me?
It
And
would
they'd be like,
you would have to convert all those type 2B, type 2A muscles that you have into 2B muscles, and
yeah,
it'd take a while.
yeah.
Um,
They would be like, all right, all that climbing you're doing, you're not going to do that.
yeah.
Like, they'll be
Mhm.
like, what's your resting heart rate? 50 beats per minute. Okay, that's pretty good. That's pretty good. But we're going to be sprinting twice a week. And I was like, okay.
Mm. Mm.
I would just get so sad because I'd be like, but I want to be in the mountains.
Yeah,
Mhm. Yeah.
you would lose an edge, I think.
Yeah, the joie
Um,
de vivre would not be there.
well, we've had. I think you need to move to France, Justin. Between your love of French existentialism and your fluent use of the word joie de vivre.
Yeah, right. My coupe de grace. But yeah, what's my next coupe de grace? Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I used to actually live in France, so
Oh, did
I
you?
was a bit of
Well,
Oh,
see,
Mhm.
there we
Yeah.
go. Where did you
I
live?
mean,
Did you?
you can't have a love of bicycles without moving to, where they treat bicycles like the Super Bowl. So
Yeah.
mm.
mhm.
So did you live in Chamonix or somewhere like that?
I lived in Paris.
Oh,
So yeah, right in the middle, right in the middle. Like the local museum was the Louvre.
oh wow.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. The Rue de Roi de Sissi. Yeah. I mean, like it was just this medieval road you could barely get a car through. So yeah, it was really amazing. Because I went to art school. So I would just wake up every day, go to an art museum, and then, go to work or something.
you've had a life.
You had a life for sure.
This
I'm
this
trying
is
to pick which superpower to highlight. I mean, you
yeah.
got like 3 dozen of them, it sounds like.
Yeah, I mean, my credo is don't be boring. So try not to.
I think you're living
Try
into
not
that.
to.
Oh yeah, you got
Right.
that hands down.
It's more like I bore easily, so it's like entertain me, Justin. I'm like, what are we doing today?
Wow.
We've talked about your highlight accomplishments, I would say. Oh my gosh. In that process, we've talked a little bit about 14ers. Do
Mhm.
you have a particular favorite 14er or a favorite 14er experience at least,
Oh yeah, I
whether as
mean,
part of these traverses or just separately?
hands down, Long Peak is my favorite 14er.
Mm.
I think it's just because there's just so many ways to approach the mountain
Mm-hmm.
and climb it. There's so many routes,
Yeah.
and I still don't feel like I've done more than maybe scratch the surface.
Mm.
Like before COVID, I was like, we're doing the diamond, we're climbing the diamond. I'm going to get in that shape. And then like everything kind of went to pot, and I had a climbing regime and all this stuff. But that's still on the hopper to do. I did have a project where I was trying to do it each month of the year by a different route, but
Mm.
also ride my bike there. So one of my mentors, Peter Backwin, had done this called the Longs Peak Project, and I was like, well, I'll make it the self-powered Longs Peak Project, but it's proven very difficult.
Mm.
But it still inspires me to try and try again. Yeah, one of the first 14ers I ever done was Mount Elbert,
Mm.
and I remember like the first year, like the year before I hiked it, I was visiting a girlfriend I was going out with at the time in Leadville. And we're just puttering around on bicycles. It's like kind of high. It's like 10,000 feet up there. And I was out of breath. I was like, whoo, this is hard, just riding
Yeah.
bikes around. And like Mount Everett kind of takes center stage of the landscape there.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
And it was like covered in snow and it looked beautiful. And I was like, that looks awesome. And I was like, it looks also impossible. I'm like, I don't know how you climb that. Like, is it like Mount Everest? Do you do like camps? Like, what's up? And I remember like I just had
Sherpas.
no idea. Yeah, I had no idea. Like it looks like it's 50,000 feet high. It really does. I knew it was like the highest peak in the state, but I really didn't understand what that meant. I didn't do a lot of hiking. So like the year afterward, let's try riding a bike to 114 or see what that's about. And it took 2 days just to get to the trailhead from Denver.
Yeah.
Mm.
And I took like 285,
Yeah, oh, yeah.
which now when I think about it, sounds like a suicide
That
mission,
sounds crazy now.
You
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah.
better have
Like
like
I
four
don't
flashers on that thing,
Oh,
man.
gosh.
oh my
Yeah.
no, I didn't think I was oblivious. But like I think there was less traffic at the time because it wasn't seen as like an alternative to I-70 as much.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
But
Yeah.
still, like there's parts like right before Kenosha Pass with it. There's no shoulder. There's
Yeah.
nowhere to go.
Nope.
This was dumb. And then I did it, and it was like this really great experience. I like started like 2 in the morning, like you're supposed to. I was trying to do everything by the book. I had the summit to myself, and like there was an American flag there, and I took silly pictures with a straw hat I found too. And it was really great. Like I had a really wonderful time, and I was like, awesome. And then like the descent again, like I'm in great shape, but at that time I wasn't hiking, so the descent down just destroyed my knees.
Mm.
Like I was out for a
Yeah.
year. Like I couldn't walk without pain. And I was like, that stinks. And made like the ride home a lot harder, but like it still like sparked something in me. I'm like, I gotta do that again. I don't even know when that was, like 29, 2010, 2011, like really early in my career as a hiker. But yeah, it was just like really special in a way that I don't think I'll ever be able to do again. Like I'm never going to be able to do the first 14 or I've ever done again.
Right.
There's
Right.
only one first, so. But yeah, it was really kind of special.
So Justin, Eric and I are, in addition to liking hiking, we like music a lot.
Oh yeah, cool.
If
Cool.
if there's a song or an album that can kind of summarize who you are as a hiker or like moments, what would that song or album be? We did not send this to you beforehand, but
No, no, no. So the song that kind of I identify when climbing up these 14ers is a song called Wild Mountain by a band called Crash Worship. Now, Crash Worship with this mythical band from the 90s that would like roll into town, play some basement, and like light off fireworks and just like cause chaos. Like they throw flour in the air so you can see and light fireworks. And then like it was like Burning Man before Burning Man. Like it was just so crazy. But it was like this like kind of religious experience that if you survived the show, you would talk about it for decades afterwards. So I never saw Crash Worship. It was a little before my time, but I was in an unnamed guerrilla marching band that we would cover the song, and it was fun to play. And like when I'm like kind of marching up these 14ers, with intensity and with intent, I think of this song. It's a lot of percussion, just boom, 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 in 4/4. So that's my song.
if you
Yeah.
ever do a Gore Range traverse, Justin, are you allowed to talk about it?
I don't know. Only to Gore Galore, I guess.
Yeah, right. Justin
Like,
Simoni, Long Ranger, straight edge crash worship
right,
emulator.
Love
right,
it.
right. That's exactly what it is.
Well,
That's
Justin,
awesome.
can't thank you enough for chatting with us today. I wish I could do half the you do. So I've always
Well,
looked on with
it's
reverence.
it's scales, you don't have to go to
Right.
such extrmes, and
I've
I don't
done
really even suggest it. Yeah.
I've done pieces of everything that you've done.
Oh, good. Yeah,
But just pieces, right? Like I've done hunks of that Sangre traverse
yeah.
and I want to be able to connect it one day, like
Hmm.
Mm.
virtually, but I've never
Hmm.
done it like at a go.
I think
So,
like it's just that youthful like wonderment, or like that question, what if
yeah.
I, and then you fill in the blank, like what if, like if there were no rules, what would I do? And like that kind of comes from, like, when I was a teenager, I would be skateboarding. I'd just be a skateboarder. So you see the landscape, the urban landscape, in a different way. You're like, I could do a trick off this and then go to this, and you just kind of put a line together. It's a very creative act. So like,
Yeah.
how can you make it? I mean, it sounds kind of cheesy, but you go like, how can I make hiking a creative act?
No, it seems like you're fueled a lot by
Mm.
imagination and creativity.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Yeah.
I've been waiting
So,
to
Yeah.
ask you when you're going to get to the trailhead on a skateboard as opposed to your bike.
It's an excellent idea. It's totally excellent idea. I think I'd want like a sail on that skateboard to like
yeah.
Oh,
get
there
up
you
the
go.
hills.
There
Yeah.
it is.
Otherwise, he's going to have like one leg that, like, the quad is like
Right.
this,
That's
and then
right.
one leg
That's
where it's
right.
like just totally atrophied.
I have to get some peanuts so I can roll them up
Yeah.
the trail. I'll do a collab with that guy.
Well, thanks a lot, Justin, for doing this.
Oh, my pleasure, of
Is
course.
Yeah,
Do you
this has been
have anything
awesome.
we could put in there? Is there anything you want to plug? Any
Sure. I mean, the easiest way to follow me is on my website, basically. You can go to justinsimoni.com. Simoni is spelled Simon and add an I at the end. It's basically the Italian version of Smith. And also, if you just Google long with a G Ranger Justin, you'll probably get, the Insta, the TikToks, whatever the kiddos are doing these days, I'll probably be on it. So
I'm a college professor, so anytime I say
right.
what the kids are doing these days, they're just like,
Yeah, it instantly makes me feel ancient. Like, yeah,
yeah.
I
No,
remember the HTML.
yeah.
That's right.
No cap, Justin. No cap.
No
Yeah,
cap.
yeah. You
Yeah,
got I
Keeping it
love
real.
the drip.
Bussin'.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
love the
You,
trip. Yeah,
you got you got Riz, Justin. All
I got
kinds of Riz.
Riz coming out of my jacket.
Thanks for taking the time to chat with us today.
Yeah, we
Oh,
appreciate it, Justin.
yeah, it's absolutely my pleasure. Of course, guys. Thanks so much for having me.
Cool. That concludes our interview with Justin Simoni. Eric, any thoughts on our chat with Justin Simoni here?
Yeah, Zach, that was a lot of fun. I had read about his adventures and excursions in the mountains a bit. Really cool to hear about someone that really just wanted to spend long periods of time in the mountains, doing it his own way, self-powered, self-supported, and it was really cool. And could not have asked for a nicer guy. I mean, he sat down with us for a bunch of time, and we just had a lot of fun chatting with him and hearing his stories. I thought it was really cool. So, what did you think?
Absolutely. I really enjoyed talking to Justin. He was humble.
Mm.
I love how he just offhandedly throws in, I was doing this 2,600-mile bike tour
Yeah.
in 25 days, as one does. Not as a way to brag, but I
No,
think
not at all.
I think the things he's accomplished are for many people kind of bucket list type deals.
Mm.
Oh, I'd love to do the Continental Divide Trail, or I'd love to bike the Continental Divide, or this or that. He's done all that in the last 10 years. What I found particularly interesting is his inspiration for hiking, the way that it really slows down his mind. He finds a sense of peace there.
Mm.
Oftentimes, I wonder what inspires athletes like him to do what they do, to spend, as he did, 60 days alone on a bike and walking in the mountains, or 120 miles on a Crestone or a Sangre traverse,
Mm-hmm.
or the Mosquito Peaks traverse. Those are big efforts, and he's alone for a long period of time. And it doesn't seem to be done out of some obsession with a list or some obsession with making it Instagram worthy
Mm.
or something kind of materialistic, but it seems like there's a real pursuit of a sense of peace,
Yeah.
a sense of accomplishment, pushing himself. I really found that fascinating. And as I told you a minute ago, I find so much of what he's doing inspiring.
Yeah.
I've been hitting the bike hard after we talked to Justin, and I I would love to be able to do at least a mimic of something like what he's done.
Mm-hmm.
And there were little tidbits in there too about how he does what he does, how he trains, the ability to just do it over and over again and to have this kind of base that you're able to push out of, I think is really important. And just some of his stories of getting rained off of a mountain, off of a good
Mm-hmm.
bivy site,
Yeah.
doing the Little Bear to Blanca traverse on the first day of a 120-mile traverse
With a heavy pack.
with a heavy pack. I mean, some of that stuff, obviously I can't do that,
Oh,
or
for
rather I've
sure.
chosen not to,
Yeah.
but he can. And like anything, it's great to watch people of a lot greater ability than myself push themselves like that.
Yeah.
So I found him motivating, inspirational, and really fascinating.
Yep. Totally agree. And it's refreshing, I think, to me at least, that he seems to really enjoy the journey as well as the destination. I think many of us kind of focus on one or the other. He seems to really get joy out of both. And that's really cool to be able to, I think, from his shoes, to be able to enjoy that time alone, like you said, that time exercising, being outdoors, everything that he loves doing, but then also sitting down with a couple of schmoes like us and sharing those stories and kind of looking back and looking fondly on those experiences. So I thought that was really cool too.
Yeah, I'm wholeheartedly in agreement.
Mm.
He's a really nice guy and really willing to share those stories. And I think I couldn't count the number of times he named people that inspired him
Yeah.
too. Always willing to kind of pass it on and cite the people that have inspired him to do some of these things and that have come before him, and the people, I guess, whose shoulders he stands on. So certainly a very worthy and interesting first guest on our podcast.
For sure. But what did you think of our interview with Justin Simoni? Let us know at greensandbluespodcast@gmail.com. Thanks for listening, and we'll catch you next time.